Okay, welcome to another Wolfram language design review, part of our incremental language development series. And we are looking at some things that were supposedly low-hanging fruit defined a decade-ish ago, or a little bit less. All right, we've got some items from user interface here. Oh, a lot of stuff here.
I'm going to emphasize supposedly there in some of these cases.
Which I didn't remember my sentence, supposedly.
Supposedly low-hanging.
Yeah, right. Okay, so one of the issues that I think was part of this, and maybe that's key press pain, is this thing about can you make a full screen interface, which I think maybe that is key press pain. It's like people, the endless kids who want to write games in our language and things like that. And they say, can I just take over the screen and press the T button to have my turtle jump?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, I remember when key press pane was proposed, and there just hasn't been a lot of oomph behind it. I don't hear, a lot of demand for it.
Look, I think in the educational sector of kids who want to do games, there would be some demand. The question is, how hard is it to do, and do we have a credible design?
Well, the design is, yeah, I'm not 100% for sure, to be honest. We can handle key presses right now, but I don't have a good sense off the top of my head, for example, how well we deal with, it's, things like you want to not just know that a key was pressed, but is it when does it go down? When does it go up? You may want to have some kind of repeating action behind it, or you may just want to know the down and up events.
Right. Well, I mean, but this design basically just says this is about key presses, and it says when you press a command A, do this.
Yeah. Well,
and maybe that's not the right thing. I mean, maybe it's not realistic.
Well, I mean, there's, but what if? I mean, there's a weakness in what's being suggested here in terms of, do you want independent things when you press command and when you press A? You may want it independent, or you may want it together.
I understand, but I think those things, that's a standard kind of, which pattern comes first type story. And I'm not too worried about that. I'm more worried about, let's say you press one of these things and you want the result of the press to be some kind of edit of what you see on the screen. We don't have a great way to do that. Maybe we do. Maybe it's just dynamic, but it seems like you're writing some very squiggly code.
When you say an edit of what you see on the screen,
you move the turtle. You press the arrow, the turtle moves. Right? Right now, it's easy for us to have something where the whole of the screen content is dynamic, and there is a variable updated. When you press right arrow, it just says X++ or something for the X coordinate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I don't know whether that's even vaguely credible in terms of how that's working in, is that useful to do that and have it be basically a screen, a complete dynamic refresh? Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, for something like a game, you need a loop. And the loop is going to have things that are changing regardless of whether or not events are happening. The events will influence the loop, but the loop runs independently of the events.
I think this is a separate look. This topic is too complicated for this. Keyboard event handler, that seems to be the junior version of this, and that seems like it is much more doable.
Well, and I'm not sure. I remember key press pane. I do not remember keyboard event handler. I'm not sure what's
how
being
is that
trying
not
to
event handler?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the difference is between this and event handler.
Well, why? How do you make? Can I make an event handler that does something when I press the letter A? The
Yes.
key A.
I believe so. Yeah, key down. I mean, I mean, yeah, this is documented in event handler. That's a key down, and you can just specify the key right. Yeah, right there.
Okay. So what would I do here? Let's say I want to turn this from red to blue. I would say dynamic. What do I say? A dynamic if, well, dynamic of X here.
Yeah.
And
I
I
mean, you
simply
need
say,
some X initialized to red, and then the
how do
event
I
handler
initialize
changes
it? With
it to blue.
with a dynamic module?
Sure. Dynamic module. Let's make it simple. Just X equals 0, or yeah, whatever. Yeah, and
X
then
equals red, and then what I want to say here is A goes to A, that thing there, X equals blue.
yeah, well, I mean, that's not the documented syntax, but
What is the documented syntax?
Do that mouse down in a
it's
sublist
it's
of
a
A.
key down.
Key down,
It's
right, key down.
List of key down, comma A.
Okay, just for jollies.
Now, the tricky thing about what you're constructing here,
That the key up has to go back.
no, actually, actually, there's something trickier. The tricky thing here is that it will only snag events when it has focus.
Yeah.
So you know, you have to get the focus in, and yeah, I mean,
No, this is almost a joke.
just yeah. I mean, you know, you could, you know, wrap a panel around it or something.
Oh, so I wrap a panel around this?
No. It has to be inside the event
Around
handler.
the X.
You can also use cell event actions or notebook event actions to have this work at a higher level. than just
Guys,
a scalar box.
we've already lost the game here. I mean, realistically.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know, I mean, in the context of, so there's an interesting thing that happens with web games, where a lot of web games, and this was, I don't know how much, you know, this might not be as much of an issue with HTML games, but it used to be a huge issue with Flash games, where the very first thing that a Flash game would get you to do is click inside the, you know, the Flash area. And that's because if you hadn't clicked in the area, it couldn't snag any events. And so it would like have a start button that you'd have to click with a mouse. But that was just a trick. Yeah. It was a trick to get focus into the Flash widget. And there's, you know, conceptually, it's a similar sort of thing here.
Okay, look, this could do with a little bit of packaging. Maybe, I mean, let's not address it here. Is there a person, I don't think this is super high priority, but this, by the way, should probably be on the global project list because it's a slightly bigger story.
Okay.
I mean, it's basically, and if you have somebody in your group who could take a little look at this, John, and just try and, you know, because obviously this is unusable. Basically, you know, by the time we've
well, it's not unusable. And to be clear, if we made it usable in the way you just described, it would become unusable in the opposite direction. You know,
yeah, no, I understand. I got it, but I mean, the fact is that by the time you've got enough little idioms here that have to be set up, we really need a function that just does this. Okay, plus a little bit of UX stuff here about whether this is active or not, and you know, some way of making it clear that it's active by having some, you know, border around it and so on, just some packaged thing where it is, where there's a hover effect that says inactive or something, click to activate or some such other thing.
Well, and that's why that was kind of the idea behind key press pane. I don't really know what the idea behind keyboard event handler is. I'm not sure that merits follow up, but
Yeah,
but
I mean,
key press pane, that was sort of the idea.
well, then maybe that's what we need. Maybe it's just this basically, with just a little bit of wrapping. I mean, at least that will be a place to start. It's just this with the wrapping necessary to make it actually usable.
Yeah.
Let's plan on trying to do that. I mean, it doesn't seem very hard. I mean, and not get into all the tentacles. Just see whether we got anything reasonable there, and take it from there.
Well, and I mean, and in talking about key press pane, I mean, you could argue maybe it's event handler pane because, does key press pane only take key events?
Yeah, why not have it be event handler pane?
Yeah.
That might be the right thing. All right, take a look at that. Okay, let's keep going. Font weight numeric values. What on earth is this?
I don't know. And
this is
by the way,
yeah.
By the way, I should say that I mean I went through the kind of list of topics, but I did not dig deep into any of these.
All right,
so
fine. I think all this is saying we've got font weight style, and we've got font weight arrow,
and we have a bunch of them, yeah, but they're all string selectors, yeah.
Okay, but I think the only point here is there a value to having numeric values? Is that a thing now known in the world?
Well, in HTML,
I understand, but if that means that font designers have designed a weight 200 font, then we might as well plug into that. That will be a question for design.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, Avery, I think you need to take that to Jeremy or somebody to find out.
Yep,
I don't know the answer to that. Okay.
I mean, the implementation is straightforward. The question is, does anyone care?
Right. And if the implementation is straightforward, we might as well, there's an argument we might as well do it, unless people say, well, that was a proposed thing, but then there was a rebellion and font designers decided not to do that. And
yeah, or people disagree on what the numbers should mean, or yeah.
Right. It's a question for a designer. Okay, let's move on. Browse view. Okay, well, this is an important thing. This is related to the modernization of short. Right?
Well, I mean, expression browsing, sure. Yeah. I'm not sure about some of these other things, but expression browsing, yes.
Right. Well, I mean, this is the elided notion of just being able to put something that says it's elided into an expression, and you press the ... and it opens up. Now, it also relates, I guess, to iconize.
Yeah.
I mean, iconize has been very successful, but
I agree.
There's sort of a question, maybe there's a more dynamic version of iconize.
There is an open in UX. This is with Noah, but Noah, has a lot of projects right now, so it's not turning over super quickly, but there is an open project for general expression folding and how we might just have a fully interactive experience with that, as opposed to the iconize experience, which is partially interactive, but has a few issues.
Well, I mean, the question for iconize is a slight redesign of iconize might mean, and I never thought about this before, that short could simply spray iconize into things.
So I am not going to comment on changing short. You are talking to the wrong person about changing short.
It's a mythical creature. I mean, because I wrote the original short, and I'm rolling my eyes slightly.
Yeah, you wrote the textual short, which is different from the box world short.
Okay.
Tom wrote the box world short.
Which TWJ?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Gosh, in ancient times, probably.
Yes, in like 1995.
Yeah, version 3. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, the question there is, the thing you get in, in the shortified version, that thing is just crazy. That thing's a version 3 creature. I mean, look at it. Look at the craziness of that. Why isn't that? What would happen if that was simply replaced by an iconize?
Well, the if the iconize held the actual data, then a
Yeah, that would be a
consequence
disaster.
a consequence is that if the data were large, that data would get shipped to the front end, and that in some cases that will be quite undesirable.
Okay, fine. But so this is an example of what we have in a zillion different cases, which Itai, I think, has become the world expert on, of things that have remote, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean,
Things where you can choose.
We don't have this as a concept in iconize, but in
Hello,
synthetic blocks,
computer.
we have a concept of a thing which has a kernel imprint that could be populated in the front end.
Why doesn't this? I'm sorry, I thought this was supposed to display. Maybe that's coming in 13.2 and I'm not running 13.2 here. I thought that display. Go ahead.
Well, maybe it's small enough that it doesn't think it's worth it to save in a file ever.
No, it is saved in a file. There's its file.
Oh, never mind.
I think it's just stupid. I mean, it's
What
not
version-
supposed to work that way. What's that?
What version are you running?
Well, 13.1, so that may be completely unfair. Let's just check this. But I mean, my basic point is this here could be exactly the same story because it's the same type of thing. It's like it got really big. You do really want to save that in a file. I mean, do you really want to ship that to the front end? We should be using the same mechanism for that as we're using for these other things.
Well, so we don't have an option for iconize to do this, and maybe we should.
Yeah, maybe we should. Maybe that's the right solution, that iconize could store its data in the kernel. I like that idea.
I'm not sure I like that idea, right? I mean, part of the point of iconize is that you have it in the notebook, and
maybe what we need is a generalized iconize.
I mean, to be clear, Itai, what I'm proposing would not be a change to the default behavior of iconize. It would be an option that you could invoke if you specifically want the it's in the kernel and provide an interface to pull it in if you really wanted.
Look at this. This is nice. This is nice what we have here. Right? It says external file, and then it says change storage location. That would be a nice thing for iconize. That you could say that there's a version of iconize where you could say, iconize range of 100, and now where I could say here what the storage location is.
Well, maybe.
I don't know. There's persistence location.
There's a method option, right? Iconize has a method option, so we could add.
Well, I'm not sure it should be as obscure as a method option, but I'm
right, but the method option already controls how it's stored. So.
Oh wow! I didn't know that. I didn't even know we could do that. Okay, so.
To be honest, I had forgotten that as well.
Yeah. Why doesn't it do that? What does it do automatically?
It stores the actual expression because that's the only thing that's 100% guaranteed to be the same.
Really? Binary serialize isn't guaranteed to be the same?
Nope.
Well, isn't there like packed array stuff with binary serialized, for example?
Well, I mean, there are two issues. One is, right, the expression is going to be like binary deserialize of some byte array rather than the actual expression.
Oh, I see. Which isn't really what we want. I mean, why doesn't it auto deserialize?
Because it has to store some expression inside, and that's the expression that's stored. I mean, there's no such if you don't have evaluation, there's no such thing as auto.
I see. Okay, fair enough.
And right, and then there are various edge cases with binary serialize and deserialize with like packed with sparse arrays or other atomic objects. So
okay, so hold on. Look, this is, I think, a very good idea that we're onto here. A version of iconize that can store its data remotely in exactly the same way as this. And again, maybe it shouldn't be called iconize. It should be called, I mean, just for one, for a name, we could call it external iconize or something. Except it isn't necessarily, right? And then the idea would be, it basically is just an interface to this exact mechanism here. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I mean, well, can't literally be true, but
I understand, but then we could have a version of short that specifically makes these things be things where this is either just in the kernel or it's a short where the notebook has to refer to some external cloud object or God knows what else to get that data that's there. And most of the time, that data would just go into La La Land because it's a session-based, piece of kernel data.
yeah, I mean, what would be a little weird, right? That's not really right. That 76 isn't really an expression, right? It's a sequence that's a part of.
Iconize deals with that. Iconize can deal with that.
Well, I mean, it can deal with the fact that it can create a sequence that's not the. Again, that's not exactly equivalent to what you started out with.
Whatever. Well, it may not be perfect, but it's going to, I mean, that's already will be super useful to have this instead of this, right? To have an external iconize in here that is like this, that has that 76 element thing in it. By the way, I do think the default display of sequence in an iconize should be something that has a number, shouldn't it? Maybe not. Maybe not. It isn't always wanted. Look, this is the thing we should be doing. This is a good idea. To basically have something where there's a version of short that uses session-based, kernel-backed iconized. Okay, who here can take this and develop it? Nick, I think I don't think that's not for John. It's not for your group yet.
Who did the original iconize?
Who did do the original iconize?
Now, it was some combination of me and Lou.
Okay. By the way, this iconize seems to be below it seems to have dropped below the baseline somehow, strangely.
Is it trying to align the text inside it? Probably.
I don't know, but it looks.
I mean, it's it may be something that makes more sense if it happened to have curly braces in it, because remember, curly braces line up on the axis points.
It looks wrong to me. I think it's a bug.
It does look like the ellipsis is baseline aligned, though.
Yeah, but I don't think it looks right. I mean, that's a design question. I just don't think this looks right. Did it get bigger?
No.
That's also wrong. Come on, that's wrong.
Well, that's not text, right? That's a graphics. Graphics doesn't resize with font.
Well, I mean, it
Or at
can
least
be
necessarily. It can.
Yeah, I mean, it can be
but-
made to resize.
I think it's just a bug. I think this should resize. Period. End of story. I think it should resize and its baseline is wrong. Okay, so Avery, that's for you to chase. It's a bug.
Got it.
Okay, now in terms of who can look at this, Nick, I mean, is this something for you?
I
Look,
could certainly take a look at it. I'm not super familiar with the iconize code itself, but I could always ask.
Well, so
Itai
Itai and Lou are probably the people to talk to.
Well, and also, I think some familiarity with what was done for audio and friends.
Who did that? Who did that?
Well, it was audio was Carlo with, help from me and Lou, right?
Okay, fine. So maybe Carlo, you, Lou, Nick can get together and talk about this. I think this is a really good idea. This external iconize. I think this will be a great solution for short. I think we can just do it. Okay, that all these things will turn into essentially kernel-based iconization, where they have some kind of button that allows you to say store it, etc. Make sense?
Yeah, we can certainly start a conversation about that.
Fine. And then they this thing might have a nested iconization. So you press one button here, it iconizes that, and etc. Okay. All right. I think that's the right version. That's the future of elided. Elided was something I've thought about for like a decade, but I think this is a better approach, this iconize version. Make sense to people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, let's move on. Stop. Huh.
This is the first I'm hearing of this.
I mean, with progress indicators, people can opt in to a stop button if they're,
I see what you're saying.
Oh,
That would be very
but
interesting.
this is different, though, isn't it?
It's different. But what you're suggesting, which I think is a good idea, is stoppable of expression.
How is this not interrupt?
I think this stop thing's more like pause than stop.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I think it's for if you're running some long thing and you basically want it to tell you, oh, by the way, here's some intermediate result, but I'm not done yet. But you should look at this result before I continue. So like an example I can imagine using this for is like you're processing some giant data set and it's going to take it 30 minutes, but at minute 15 it encounters some weird situation and it's going to pause and ask you, should I continue? Is this okay? And
right.
Yeah.
Why aren't you using dialogue then? A function we never use.
Isn't that just like choice dialogue? Because that blocks the kernel and waits.
It very well may be. I've never used choice dialogue, so
Wouldn't you have to block here in order to
You would.
get input?
Yeah, you would. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I mean, there are certainly various, and not just choice dialogue. There's other similar sorts of things if you're running in a notebook front end that you can do. Message dialogue, dialogue input.
right. I don't think we ever think about those things because frankly, nobody ever does.
Or just input, which also works
Yes.
in terminal session.
Yes. Okay, but the idea here, the new idea here is two things. I mean, and this is closely related to progress monitor, etc. Right, really, this is a progress. I think I'm segueing this to something slightly different, which is a wrapper that says put up a progress monitor for this thing that is, what is the status of us being able to do that?
There's an open PR for, for the same class of things that, monitor can do, I think. Or no, it was extending monitor to do this.
Okay, well, I think this is a worthwhile thing. In other words, being able to have, monitoring a map, for example, where there isn't a variable to talk about. We did talk about this. So what happened to that? Did you implement something?
I think so. I mean,
okay, so
obviously it's limited and it will slow things down.
I understand that, but let's okay. So can we please bring that to closure because it really seems worthwhile?
Well, we're trying to ship 13.2, so
I know. So we're not.
I told you, Stephen. I told you there's an open PR. That means it's being worked on, and
okay. Except that I know that the aging report for open PRs has some pretty geriatric ones.
Okay. Well, it's being worked on.
Okay, that's great. Just translation for me. when people say an open PR, maybe I can ask John this question. I mean, you know, I used to think that means it's imminent, but then somebody told me there are PRs that have been open for 3 years.
I might have been that person.
It goes both ways. You know, I mean, 90% of PRs resolve within a week, but there's a long tail.
Okay, all right, fine. If this is not a tail animal, if this is an untailed animal, I'm a happy person.
It's not a tailed animal.
Great. Then that sounds excellent. Let's move on. Font data and font measurements. That seems go ahead.
Font measurements. So I don't remember the request for this, but font measurements sounds like something that people think they want, and when they get it, they realize it's not what they wanted at all. Because people are going to assume that if I measure the glyphs of a font, then I can come up with useful information about what happens when those glyphs appear in a word. And in fact, that's not how drawing of text works.
Right. But there's also things like the bounding box. I mean, how do you get, is it a current value? If I wanted to get the bounding box for a piece of text, the size.
Rasterize has a raster size selector.
I know, but I hate that way of doing it. I mean, I think this is, what is a raster size? What do I say here?
Isn't it quotes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just a rather backwards way to do it. And what I think I'm asking for here is perhaps just a function that gets you out as an association, for example, a whole collection of, is this making any sense? A whole collection of sort of font metric information or box metric information.
What do you want to be in that association? I mean,
I don't know, baseline.
I mean, the one obvious thing that's missing here is the baseline.
Yeah.
And by the way, we used to have a developer backtick function that returned those 3 numbers, and it you know, it didn't make the cut. It was people used it, and I think it was even documented for a while, but you know, when we you know, when we called the developer backtick functions, it didn't make the cut.
I wonder whether we did that before we had associations.
We might have. Entirely possible.
I think we should relook at that with associations.
But I mean, you know, there's all kinds of interesting, you know, font data if you're just kind of want to get data about a given font that, you know, doesn't have anything to do with measurements, but you know, but
why not get it? I mean, we can.
Well,
you know,
but it's effort, and the question is the effort worth it? How to prioritize it?
Yeah, I don't think it's hugely. I mean, it depends on how easy it is. You know, if there's just some, you know, C record that you could almost expose, I don't know, even maybe, I don't know, what is it? I mean, how do you get the font data from the operating system or whatever? What is it?
Well, it is operating system specific unless we use free type to process the fonts, which can be done, but it's a little more tedious. But yeah, I mean, you know, being able to get things like what Unicode ranges does the font advertise having glyphs for? What are the properties of the?
This will be very useful.
What are the properties of the font in terms of, does the font claim that it has serifs? Does it claim it has symbols, etc.?
You know what? In our world of getting data on everything, we really should have this.
Yeah, and I mean, in principle, I'm not opposed. In practice, it's just trying to squeeze the workload in, you know?
Right. Although that could be done, doesn't require an absolutely incredibly experienced developer. I think that's a thing. I think it's something we should have. But now this separate thing about measurements, you know, which is kind of like box measurements or something, seems like we should reinvigorate that developer function, return an association, and just call it box measurements, in my view.
And it's an association because we can, I don't know, because we can specify a baseline position and break out height and depth.
Yes, height, depth.
I mean, it's kind of it's kind of multiple ways of saying the same thing, of course, but yeah.
It doesn't matter, but something where we'd return by default an association, but then you could obviously have an individual selector like font measurements of blah blah blah, comma depth or something, comma quotes depth, and then you get that directly.
Okay, but to be clear, this is font measurements. This is you're measuring an expression. You're not, the typeset version of an expression. That's what you're measuring. You're measuring a
really.
Set of
This is okay. So this is a separate item here, and really what this is now box measurements.
Yeah.
Or a box.
Yeah.
All right. These are both good things. All right. Let's keep going. Better handling of dynamic warnings and trusted files. Now, that's become less. I haven't noticed one of those stupid dynamic warnings for me personally, but that's probably because somebody just switched it off for me.
There was, I forget the situation, but there was a specific thing that was firing way more often on your system because of how you configured your shared drives or something. The details are.
So it was a bug that was fixed, do you think?
I think so.
It wasn't just a protection that was removed.
So far as I know, no one turned it off universally on your system, but I'm not 100% for certain.
Okay, can I suggest that this is one of these UX, flow things that could get looked at as dynamic?
Well, I mean, we have looked at it, but you can't really UX your way to a better system. This is a technology problem, and it requires, a decent system requires effort. It's been suggested that, the cryptography team could jump in and help out. And I'm not opposed to such a suggestion, but I haven't been able to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, we also lost a developer there, so that doesn't help. But I think at some point we should try and figure out, is there a crypto solution to this?
There is a crypto solution to this. I know in my head what it would look like, but it's just not trivial to implement.
And the plumbing around it is not trivial. It's not the cryptography itself that's non-trivial.
Right. So
just a hash or something on the file.
Basically, if every if every installation auto generates its own private key, this might be tied, of course, to the user login in the cloud or something like that, then you would never see the warning for files that you saved. We could make that happen. And then you could declare, I could declare that if I get a document and I believe that document to be from Stephen Wolfram, and I can say, accept all documents from Stephen Wolfram, and then I'll never see it again for any.
But that requires security certificates and all kinds of things like that to make that work.
Yes, exactly.
But the self one doesn't require that. The self one doesn't require security certificates.
Well, it's still a certificate. It's just self-signing. So there's a secondary question of, where you could go farther and have a certificate authority, and we could designate, certain people who are trusted outside the company as having the authority to create these things, and that would be interesting and useful. But yes, that is definitely a tier of.
And there's also a blockchain aspect to this that we could think about, and so, boy, to me, this seems like it's something that might be somehow part of the whole license management story as well, because this business about security, certificate authorities and so on reminds me of that.
Yeah, and we have bits and pieces of the technology around this, but
I think this should be fed to. I mean, this is the kind of thing. Maybe Andrew could look at this, perhaps, to try and see whether there's a system-wide, thing, because it's going to require, as you said, it's going to require server technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
Avery, could you try and feed it to Andrew DeLay, see if he can look at this?
I can make contact with him.
Okay. All right. Let's just keep going here. Okay. Texture mapping.
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead.
we're making progress on this, which is to say we're supporting vertex texture coordinates arrow automatic, which basically just does what 99% of the time you wanted it to do.
Okay, that's great. All right.
And the it's work for us because we have to define what automatic is for each new thing. But
I know it's complicated.
But we've been making good progress on that over the course of 13.0, 13.1, and maybe even 13.2. I can't remember if we did anything for 13.2.
So
Definitely in 13.0 and 1 we did.
It's moving. Okay. Yeah. Can we I know you have to go soon, so I want to just look ahead here at some of the things that I think are this one, glyph graphics.
So we have the technology for this. This is just me sitting down and doing the design. If I spent a couple hours doing the design, I think we could knock this out pretty quickly.
Why does it need much design? Because of things like baselines and so on, or what?
I mean, because it's not been thought about much except to give it various names.
Okay, but does it is it correct? This works through PDF import, or is it more direct?
Not anymore. There is now a direct mechanism in the front end that will do this.
Okay, well, this seems like something. Okay, fine.
Yeah, but I mean, for example, you might want to do things like like scale the coordinates that it uses, for example. I mean, it's just going to look like a random set of a random coordinate space.
Well, we can talk about this.
Didn't Lou put like a text graphics or something like that in the prototype build that uses?
He might have, yeah. And with this, and this comes back to, as I said, I mean, it's basically just me sitting down, working through a proposed documentation page, and I can bring it to, ILD or LCC when I do.
Okay, fine.
And we can probably knock it out pretty quickly.
Okay, let's just quickly look at these. Anything else here? I mean, we got other things to look at here.
What's function typesetting?
That may be.
I mean, glyph graphics and text geometry, those were basically the same thing. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, refuses to go to smaller size. All right, I'll put this underneath it. Whatever. Okay, those are the same. Okay. Typesetting of function when there's a single hash, so it's not hash 1.
I mean, that's I don't know why John is.
Yeah, that's not a front end thing. That's
not a front. Yeah, that's not a front.
That's a make boxes thing.
Can we fix that?
I mean, probably do if we really want to.
I think it'd be nice.
I can, yeah, I can take a look. I think.
Okay. All right, fine. Let's just look at a couple of things that I know John has to go. Create full screen.
I have, although my name is attached to it and it's suggested that I've somehow participated in discussion about this, but I have no recollection what this is supposed to be.
Well, all this is it's just taking something that makes a notebook that is full screen.
Okay.
It's really pretty trivial. We should, okay.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Why did we not do this? This was an obvious thing to do. This is really something we should do.
I don't remember that being in my queue, and there's
Then
no
feedback?
reason. There's
No.
no reason my group has to do this.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Nick, I think that's something for you.
Yeah, we can certainly even start with a function repository version along those lines, but then
Fine. I think you should plan on having this.
Yeah, I don't know what Cell would do. I mean, I would understand Notebook to be the current notebook. I don't know what
That
So-
doesn't make sense, really, quite. So,
And it's now time for me to bug
okay.
out here.
All right. Okay. See you, John.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
I have to go too. Bye.
Well, we can continue with a few of these things.
I also have to cut out, but I don't think any of these involve me.
Well, then we should probably wrap up here.
Yeah, I don't think any involve me, actually. Let me know if I'm wrong, but
Okay. It seems like we have to wrap up here. Unless there's anything here that is
yeah, I mean there was a note I was just going to mention that last week we talked about hardware based random number generation, and Avery and I did a little digging into that, and as far as we can tell, no one's actually been looking into it. We talked to Rob and Tom and Mark and Dave, and Rob said as long as we can feed in a bit stream, it's not hard to hook in to the random functions. But it looks like if that was a project that we wanted to be bouncing around, so far no one's done anything with it.
okay. I mean, maybe that's a thing with Christopher's modern library linking mechanisms, that there's an easy way to do it.
Well, I was about to mention, well, maybe two related things. The first thing is, I think in the cryptography packlet, there at least was a way of hooking into OpenSSL's supposedly cryptographically secure pseudo-random number generator, which might be using, I mean, I'd imagine it should be using some kind of hardware randomness if it can. I don't know if it is, but I think there's a function in some internal context that does that. There's like some documentation examples about calling that same function using the compiler stuff, but I think that functionality already exists in some internal context.
Maybe you could try and find it and then feed that back. Okay. Let's just have a quick look through here, and I can tell you which of these are a thing. I thought we were doing something on this in the cloud.
Yeah,
Are we not?
I know Kevin Daly has a prototype for date setter, or at least building a tool set for it. And I believe there's a geo setter for the cloud, or at least the standard sort of web.
Okay, so Avery,
interface
go
for
chase this. We don't know let's get some more data on what's going on with this one.
Okay. Yeah.
That's for John. Huh?
I'm assuming that's some sort of connection speed between the front end and kernel. I don't know.
No, I think that the connection speed, I have no idea. I'm guessing from the name, it could be either a connection speed tester, which would be kind of interesting to have and useful. Given a URL, just like we can do a ping time.
Yeah.
If we say, ping time, whatever it is, www.wolfram.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having connection speed measurement would be useful. Let's see if we can't.
Equivalent to like your speedtest.net or whatever that checks ping time to.
Yeah, but I mean,
ISP and
connection
upload on
speed is a different thing. I mean, ping time is what it is,
that.
and connection speed is the throughput.
Right. Upload, download rate, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, we won't be able to do. Oh yeah, yes, we can do both of them, right? We can do upload. I mean, download speed, I don't know how it works because this is CMP packets, right? So download speed, I don't know how those work. And I could imagine that the packet transfer speeds for CMP and UDP and TCP and so on are all different. I think we should look at that, but that's nothing to do with the front end group. Okay,
Yeah,
so
okay.
Anybody here know how to, there's a question, I don't know, we need to find somebody who just knows this, like somebody from the systems team or something who just knows how you do this.
Yeah, I can certainly ask Fahim, what we have in curl length, but I could also check with, like you said, the systems team and see
Yes,
what we actually use to measure that.
fine. That's fine. Maybe there's a library we can just link to that just does this.
Mhm.
It seems useful to me,
Okay.
especially because we got nice units and blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
seems useful. Okay. What the heck is this doing with Roger? Well, this is a John thing. We're going to have to ask him. Drag receiver. That is the whole drag and drop subsystem developed like 15 years ago and never finished. And there's a certain argument that we should at least get WFR versions of it. Avery, that's the thing for you to chase.
This is basically the placeholder of drop the file here, drop the image here, etc. as an interface.
Well, actually, this is different. This one is different. That one is what you just said, which makes a lot of sense. That one seems very useful. The other is the full drag and drop system, which Teo developed probably 15 years ago. And if nobody else knows where that code is, Teo would know where the code is. And Teo is back with us, although in a different capacity. I would recommend for this drag receiver stuff and drag and drop and so on, I think given the modern world of the function repository, we could try and put a version of it in the function repository. Avery, that's something for you to chase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this image drag receiver just seems very useful and not very hard. And that's for John. Okay. Any comments about that? That again seems useful, but I mean, maybe, I don't know. No, that's not for WFR. That's a thing that is needed. That's a John thing. We need to talk to him about it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few more items here. Avery, please, prune this appropriately. Okay, for the next time we do this meeting and have John in it. Makes sense, Avery?
Yep. Yep.
That's very useful and important. Okay. Well, was Ricardo here? I mean, HTTP, what is this thing here?
Yeah, so he's on the attendee
Hello.
list. Yep, there.
Give me a second to take an headset.
I've been told that D-Trend is naive.
Yeah, I think we talked about it briefly. I wanted to include if we were going to talk about the stats things, we have Gosha who could jump in. But like we said,
Hello.
Hi. Okay. This thing here, HTTP response function, method dispatcher, etc.
Well, method dispatcher, okay, seems to be pretty straightforward. I'm not sure about HTTP response function.
What is it? Is there an HTTP response function right now?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Um,
But so this is,
okay, well, this is something like URL dispatcher, but it dispatches over the method. So I guess it can be nested with other stuff we already have. So URL dispatcher dispatches on the path, and this will be a dispatch over the method.
seems reasonable to me. Right.
Sure. Not sure what you should do when you don't provide enough rule or the method is wrong. There must be some kind of fallback. So in that case,
But what does anything else do? I mean,
I guess you could use a blank to define it. But I mean, if you don't define anything,
no, I
doesn't-
understand. If the method isn't there, then it does nothing, presumably.
Well, nothing. You need to return some kind of response. We're gonna
400
return off 400
response.
something. Yeah.
Yes, I mean that makes sense. If it isn't, it's just not available, right? So, okay,
Sure.
seems like a reasonable thing. Is it
Okay.
hard to implement?
Well, no, not really. Hard as usual is to documentation and yeah, stuff like that. But yeah,
Okay,
the
all right.
actual
Not the highest
implementation is
priority,
not.
but I think we can take it that this is going to happen then in some way.
But I'm not sure what is HTTP response function.
Let's ignore it. We don't know what it
Okay.
is. I think it was an alternative name for this. You like the name HTTP method dispatcher, which is probably the right name for it.
Right.
Right? If it's like URL dispatcher,
Yeah.
it would be the same. It would be the analog of that.
So it would be either only method dispatcher, but maybe it's too generic, or HTTP method dispatcher.
Yeah, I got to call it HTTP method.
Okay.
So I think that's the right name for it. I'm not sure if I can delete this. Why are these things uneditable? Are they uneditable? No, they're not. Looks good to me. Okay. Anything else here that we can cover with the people who are available here?
Yeah. So the last one is kind of a quick point, but we've had a couple of people ask about, information has this internal association that lives inside of it that has keys and values associated with it. And there's not currently an extractor to say, basically, give me all the data that's within information without typesetting. You can structurally extract it, but we don't want to encourage that.
Well, what are some names of, what are some,
So I think that one of their proposals was to have all as a key. Currently information's keys are all strings, so a symbol would be distinct, but that isn't a hard and fast rule.
I think all is fine, or property association. But
yeah.
is how close is property association? I mean, usually we have things like data set representing, put this in a data set, and property association is the kind of thing you have right there.
Yeah, property association would mirror what entity value does, for example, where we'd have the keys with the properties and then the values.
All right. Well, I think having data set and property association and all wouldn't be terrible.
Okay. Yeah, that gives some flexibility. Someone proposed doing normal, which I don't really like because
no, bad idea. Okay. All right. We made good progress here today. Avery will prune this for the next time we have to continue on it.
Yep. And we're almost all done with all the low hanging, as little low hanging as some of it was.
Huh. That's interesting. Are there not previous files that this is really everything?
This was everything that was left. So we've gone through like 100 items from.
No, I'm aware, but I mean, I'm just asking the question. Weren't there things that were, what was it called? Okay, so we had this thing called designs. Okay, and which is this? Is this green lighted, longer term?
This is low hanging 0-2 and the other variations of it.
Okay, but like things like this or under consideration 01.
Those weren't looked at.
Okay, we need to do that. Okay, so basically what I think we should do is take this whole section, take this whole thing here. I have no idea what that is, for example. Oh gosh, we're still working on these things. You got to go through this whole directory. And what I think we should do is move things, into, I mean, there's things here that are done, that are not done, etc. We've got more to do here.
Okay.
And also, this here, there's a bunch of things here as well. Okay. So we looked at this.
No.
Not recently, no.
Okay, well, let's do that in another one of these meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've done a lot of stuff here. A lot of stuff is done. That's a good idea. And this is important. This one is important. This has a lot of worthwhile stuff in it. That's an interesting idea as well. Okay, well, we've got more to do, but we're making good progress, so can't complain. All right, anything else here? Oh, okay, and I mean, clearly when we've done these, I think these are the next step. Let's do these, and then we should go back to WFR promotion.
Okay.
Yep, sounds
Makes
good.
sense to me.
Okay, good work. All right, see you guys soon.